All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bridget Mess and I am a marketing manager at Proficient. I'm excited to be hosting today's webinar, Deliver Data You Can Trust, Automate and Optimize Your Office of Finance with CPM. So time permitting, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the event. So please type your questions in the Q&A tab just to the right of your screen, and feel free to do this at any point throughout the presentation. Two questions that often come up during these events are, can I get a copy of the slides? And can I get a link to this recording? The answer to both of those questions is yes. We will email you with the information on how to access both of these after today's events. To kick things off, I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers, Carlos Fox and Saju Phillips. Carlos Fox is a certified public accountant with 30 years of experience in the corporate performance management, enterprise resource planning, and analytics domains. He has an extensive background in CFO solution specialties, including OneStream software, CPM architecture and programs, analytics, and business intelligence solution architecture. Saju Phillips is the Director of Corporate Performance Management at Proficient, and he has over 20 years of experience in designing and developing solutions that support the close, consolidation, planning, and budgeting processes. He has proficiency in requirements definition, master data design, user interface development, implementations, and testing. I will now hand it over to our first speaker, Saju, to tell us a little bit more about Proficient.
Thank you, Bridget. Hello, everyone. My name is Saju Phillips, and we're going to start with a brief introduction about Proficient. We're a global consultancy firm, and the focus of this webinar, and thank you for your time today, is going to focus on corporate performance management. But overall, we're a much larger, we have a much larger footprint in the consultancy space. As you can see here, our projected revenue for this year, we're growing into a planned billion-dollar company. We have large relationships with Fortune 1000 clients. And specifically for this webinar, what we're going to talk about is data and how you're going to manage your data through processes with the CPM project. So we have extensive experience there with over 1,500 plus CPM projects delivered. Where we'll start, and we can go to the next slide, Bridget, is what are our business challenges? And I'm going to introduce Carlos Fox here to get started on business challenges and then talk about the Office of Finance.
Thanks, Saju. Good morning, all. And again, thank you for your time. This is Carlos Fox with Proficient. Really, the content today is about demystifying the topic of corporate performance management. As we look at our clients and our legacy experience in this space, really, it's about finance leaders transforming their respective practices in such a manner they can become a true advisory role to the business. The business challenges that we often see that CPM addresses head on really have to do with data collection, data management, the associated reporting analytics, and all the processes in between. Some of the key bullets you see here are core to those business challenges that have, again, commonality across all industries and across all clients. And that starts with multiple legacy systems. That could be multiple ERPs, could be multiple sales order entry systems, etc. Additionally, most finance organizations are addressing the challenges that corporate performance management addresses via disparate tools. That again could be inclusive of ERP, but most likely it includes Excel, perhaps other reporting tools, perhaps other data management tools. In addition, we see a lot of manual processes, especially during the financial close and reporting cycles. And the focus of CPM is to address those manual processes head on, redefine them, optimize them, and automate them, freeing up valuable time for finance resources, again, to spend more time in an advisory capacity to the business. Additionally, no single source of the truth. Working with multiple data sets, multiple data repositories, and struggling to bring all that data together during the various cycles in which accounting and finance are involved. Next slide. As we look at the topic of CPM and the capabilities of CPM in the Office of Finance, again, to demystify the topic, at its core, it is the finance team, people, process methodologies, and technology that come together, again, to enable finance teams to become more efficient, to scale as their businesses grow and expand, and again, to improve that advisory capacity to the business. This is really a best practices view at adopting CPM and the CPM journey, and we'll also touch on that later in the presentation. What we can't stress enough from a CPM perspective is starting with a maturity assessment and current capabilities assessment is key to understand where the organization is in its life cycle as it relates to all financial processes and technologies. Some organizations are very, very mature. Others are early in their life cycle. Obviously, there are different degrees of complexity involved. The next step in that journey is to perform targeted process optimization, where you focus on key processes, again, both from an accounting domain perspective and a FP&A domain perspective, on optimizing those key processes, driving some best practices and methodologies. And then ultimately, CPM is about the adoption of technology and marrying that technology to your optimized processes in order to achieve a successful CPM journey. Next slide.
Thanks, Carlos. So typically where most clients are, and we start engaging with them, that does not have a CPM platform, they're getting their data from their ERP systems. And most organizations use that to basically manage their business from an accounting perspective. You know, it has all the built-in internal controls. It has all the transactional information that every company then needs to do to run their business. When we talk about corporate performance management, you know, we want to layer on a platform on top of that, because current state in a lot of organizations are taking the data that comes from the ERP systems. You might have one, you might have two. If you're a truly global firm, you might have, you know, dozens of ERPs. You're taking extracts from this transactional system to manage your business, and that typically happens in Excel. That includes, you know, managing people, you know, delivering your financial reports. Now, some ERP systems do have financial reporting built in, but it's basically, you know, just get the initial results for the income statement, for the balance sheet. You know, we can look at the historical data, but we can't really do analytics off of that. It serves a purpose, right? ERP systems will never go away. You know, that's how you conduct and run your business on a day-to-day level. But what we want to do is, hey, let's take that data and let's introduce a platform to the organization that can help first manage your business. So what does that mean? You know, you could have one, you could have multiple ERP systems. Those could have different chart of accounts. You want to standardize the way you want to do your reporting and analytics in one platform. So in every project, every client discussion that we have is, where are we as how you're managing your processes and your reporting needs within your organization? We take that information, you know, take that data from the disparate systems, and we think about, with the CPM platform that you choose, you know, how are we going to drive your key processes to understand how your business is doing, identify KPIs, identify, you know, key metrics that you want to analyze, and build views of information. Now, if you're a global firm and let's say you have dozens of ERPs, Each one of those ERPs is going to have its own chart of accounts. You want to standardize that into one reporting layer at corporate. Most organizations are doing that in Excel today if you don't have a CPM platform. And what we want to do is we want to understand, hey, what does management need to do to understand how revenue is being reported, how your net income is being reported, what are you looking from a balance sheet trend perspective. Create all of that standardization, not just from a financial statement perspective, but also the key driver in your system or your business on how you want to report that data. And we build that platform to understand multiple views. Management might have a view, financial might have a view, operational analytics might have a view. Well, marketing or advertising might want different sets of data. We build all of that into the platform. Another key aspect for a global firm is understanding how currency impacts your business. So building in translations, looking at actual data against budget rates, all of those things is what a CPM platform will provide. And as Carlos mentioned earlier, is, what is that single source of truth? That's a main goal there, right, of that CPM platform, is that's the central source of truth that we make our decisions. And as we go through the close process, what adjustments do we need to make? Do we need to do any allocations or reclassify data? With the CPM platform, you can do all of that. And another thing another layer that brings into the process is all your internal controls. So when we think about SOX and managing audit and all of those things that go through accounting close, we can leverage your CPM platform to make sure your internal controls are satisfied, have approval workflows, all of those things. That's that first layer, managing your business. Then if you take it another step further, right, is how do you model your business for the future? Taking all of that data that we have and, making projections into the future. And typically start with an annual operating plan or an annual budget. How is that built up? I'll talk more to that here in subsequent slides. But the main goal of a platform is not just bring in actual data, not just bring in budget data, but also plan for the future. Your forecast, your rolling forecast, doing acquisition modeling, building maybe even financial and operational analytics where data might be coming from different sources. So we have data coming from the ERP, but then we also have a data warehouse that we do business analytics off of, and take that BI platform and bring it in and do modeling. So the whole goal here is to demonstrate that, hey, if you only have an ERP right now, that's what you're using to manage your business. You're using Excel to not only, take that transactional data, but also report off of it. Why not consider a CPM platform? And if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk about 3 key areas of what a CPM platform can do for you. Drill into a little bit of the detail, and then we'll finish off with an additional aspect for capital planning. Most organizations choose a CPM platform to do financial close. That consolidation process is key on a month-end basis, a month-end close basis, quarter-end, year-end. Every organization needs it. What we're doing here is typically through a project is replacing an Excel-based system or another CPM platform that you might be migrating from. But the purpose is close. How do you manage that? How do you remain compliant? Every CPM platform has some type of task management that we can do, that we can layer in all of not only the monthly checklist that you might be managing in Excel today, which would include just steps that you would do in the platform, but also outside of the system. I need to make sure that, journal entries are posted in each ERP by Workday 5 or something of that nature. All of those checklists can be built in to a CPM platform. We take the data, we close off, we consolidate it, build in all of the currency translation that's needed. So that's built into these platforms. Looking at data not just from a every month average ending rate or closing rate, all of that data for actual purposes, but also do comparisons against constant currency for reporting needs. Once that close process is defined, account reconciliations is a huge ask from a lot of our clients. And CPM platforms can give you that granular level of detail of reconciling your data within the system versus having to do it in Excel. And that includes running rules on transaction matching. So, taking data from even subledger information can be built into these platforms, which is a very powerful tool. And we have a lot of organizations that do account reconciliations now within the CPM platform without having to purchase a separate tool. So when we think about it from an executive standpoint, right, why would I consider a CPM platform? Well, we're thinking about not just doing just close, right, but we're also thinking about, hey, all of the other business processes the platform can provide versus just focusing on, hey, I'm going to use this system just for close, another system for planning. Let's think about all of that when we're making a decision to move from one system to another or moving from Excel to another. Also, during the close process, there's lots of other detail that we can incorporate into a CPM project, including allocations. Intercompany eliminations are huge for organizations that have all the internal transactions going between legal entities or companies. We can also layer in journal entries within the platform, and if needed, you can book it back to the ERP through a process that we need to define. But in my view, the key aspect for end users that use the system, that sign off on a platform and be able to deliver a project going live is about the reporting. What are the different views that we need to include once we consolidate for management reporting, for statutory reporting, taxes involved? So it's a platform that can be used throughout the organization. So close is one. Can move to the next slide, Bridget. The next piece is when you're thinking about the budgeting and forecasting piece within that platform, how are you going to drive your annual operating plan or the numbers that you're going to start for next year? And that can be derived multiple ways. For those of you in FP&A, you might be doing this in Excel or another system. Decisions need to be made on how we're going to, drive that data. We're going to start top down, bottoms up. Do you get a target from the C-level executive team and say, hey, we need to meet that target? Or is it basically, okay, take every single piece of data from the lowest level and build it up to build a plan? That can be driver-based, that could be input, all depends on the requirements for the organization. We're going to talk a little bit about your CPM journey a little bit later, but those are the things that we can assess for your organization. When we think about planning, it's about eliminating all of those manual emails or having those conference calls to do approvals, and let a system drive the process. And that's where workflow comes in. That's where approvals come in. And you can leverage that for any type of planning that you're doing, be it going down to an employee ID for people planning, or planning your CapEx for next year and doing allocations. So built-in workflow, built-in approval systems for process, all of that comes with a platform that we can enable. Another piece of planning is what I like calling specialized planning or specialty planning that you can do within your organization. Every customer has some level of requirements of, hey, I need to get the income statement done. I have, I need to get my revenue planning done. But then do we want to drill into an additional layer? Doing things like supply chain, operational planning, all of those things are capable in any platform that you choose. Another big piece, and I used to be a former financial analyst, and before we went to a CPM platform, we were doing this in Excel, is saving all that data, Excel spreadsheets, version 1, version 2, and so on. So if we can get data in the system of your choice and build in that version controlling and building the approvals and governance, it just makes your whole process efficient. So when we think about budgeting, that's where we start. And we can go to the next slide, Bridget, is how do you build up your forecast? And the forecasting piece, we're thinking about, how are we going to develop your seating rules? How are we going to develop your adjustments for your users to build let's say a 12 to 18 month rolling forecast? Is that going to be driver based? Are we taking actual data and seeding it, building in a percentage increase or decrease? All of those rules, calculations, forms, workflow, all of that can be built in the forecasting module. A key thing from an organizational aspect that's the future, which is actually starting today, is the concept of machine learning and AI. So a lot of these tools that you might be looking at, that's going to be, I think, the future on taking the data that you have and leveraging machine learning and AI to forecast out data, doing predictions, all the necessary granular detail that needs to be built up from a data standpoint the platform can hold. Now building all the calculations and algorithms going forward is the key. And when we think about forecasting, that can take multiple levels. It could be based on scenario. It could be based on a project gross margin that you're trying to hit, or a profitability by store. It all depends on what business line that you're in. But all the modeling capabilities are there. It's really about how a customer or an organization wants to use the platform. And I'll transfer this over to Carlos here next for the next slide to talk a little bit about capital planning and then how we start this journey.
Thanks, Saju. To Saju's point, as you look at your overall planning processes, capital planning and capital allocation is one of those processes that is core to what a CPM solution addresses. Our experience is that this specific process is one that is often certainly not optimized and often an overlooked and last minute planning item. It is a very significant process in manufacturing, in wholesale distribution, retail build outs, even healthcare, quite frankly. CPM addresses not only the process, as Saju mentioned, bringing you the workflow and governance that is often absent from capital planning because it's being managed in spreadsheets or a combination of a fixed asset system, ERP general ledger and spreadsheets. There is no enterprise visibility, workflow, and governance. And that's where CPM is front and center to improving that manual process. Really, it's about improved visibility and prioritization and making better capital planning, investment expenditures, and allocation decisions. One of the mysteries to capital planning is often the metrics that are used in making decisions or analyzing the prioritization of capital are not consistent across the organization. That's where CPM, giving you a central place to manage process, but also do the analytics, can drive some standards and improve enterprise decision making, really with the goal of removing the subjectivity from the approval process. On an ongoing basis, where CPM also adds enormous value is the ability to manage and monitor capital projects that are in flight, meaning not only getting through the capital evaluation and approval, but once a capital planning project launches, having the ability to collect the relevant data to analyze the performance of that capital and having accountability to the allocation and the budget and where it's trending to completion. That's that ongoing monitoring and variance analysis noted here. And really amongst the clients that I've worked with on this topic specifically, we've gotten to a good place in order to performance rank those those capital projects once they're in production and have come to conclusion. Next slide. Sergeant. This, as Sergeant spoke to earlier, is about the CPM journey. And what you'll note here is 4 key themes. As a roadmap to success, we suggest obviously focus and alignment of the teams that are involved in the process. That's all about people and the processes. And also key to that roadmap is that capability assessment. And I would add to that involves the maturity of the enterprise. We work with clients that are just starting their CPM journey, that do not have maturity with respect to a CPM technology or platform, and have not gone through process optimization. Again, we think these 2 key initial steps are a best practice to addressing and adopting a CPM platform. Initiative realization really is about starting to put the optimized processes in the CPM platform together. That's kind of the secret sauce where finance really becomes a strategic partner to the business. And again, it's about marrying those optimized processes to the CPM platform. And ultimately, it's about payback and value realization. And that's a key component when you go live with a CPM platform of really starting to make finance much more efficient, much more scalable, and again, improving its advisory capacity to the business. That's that value realization phase and really where the payback starts. Next slide.
Thanks, Carlos. So as Carlos just mentioned, that process optimization piece, that's typically where it starts. So what I want to talk about here and spend a few minutes on each one of these graphics is, you're here at this webinar because you're either a client looking to move to a CPM platform, you're making a decision on a purchase, and maybe you're the internal champion for your organization. They're trying to convince the C-level executive team, or you're the C-level executive person yourself, is what does that program success look like? And what are the best practices? And, Carlos and I have been around the space for a while, and it always comes down to timelines. What are our internal goals, budget, obviously, and what can we put into different phases to accomplish what we're trying to get from a realization standpoint, a value realization, I should say, of what the end product should look like. That might happen across multiple projects. That might happen with one very lengthy project. It all depends on what the goals are. And how do you define those goals? That's going to be where that assessment comes in. And most organizations are trying to hit some type of deadline. Maybe they need to gut off another platform for whatever reason. Maybe they have a standing order from the board that, hey, we need to get off of Excel. The best way to start is look at your current state, look at how you're processing information today from your ERPs, but more importantly, from a functional process standpoint, how is FP&A building up their budget and forecasts? What are the things that we can do more efficiently in accounting to perform close better? That's where that process optimization piece starts. And again, typically starts with an assessment. We provide all of the best practices that we've seen, over the years from various organizations, how they handle close, how they handle building another annual operating plan, how they do account recons. That is a necessary evil that needs to be done. Now, would you engage a partner to do that? We would highly recommend it, right? Obviously, there's some large mature organizations out there that might do that internally. Regardless, when you're going to a CPM platform, have that discussion before the project starts And then we start thinking about requirements and design. We want to have all of that information done when we're going into a global design. Now, when we think about the platform that you're going to leverage to do all of those processes, we start with some type of prototype application or blueprint, if you will, and say, hey, these are the ways that you can do intercompany elimination and standardize it across your organization. Or these are the ways we can do driver-based planning and, again, standardize or across your organization. We want to develop a master chart of accounts, to build into that design for the eventual application. That's what the whole global design effort is about. And the end outcome of that global design should be a blueprint, a design document that both the customer and the partner agree upon so we can move into the build phase. And that drives not maybe just phase one, but also accounts for future phases. And 2 years down the road, I want to use account recs, or 1 year down the road, I want to use planning because I want to do close first. That lays the entire foundation. And have we seen changes when we get to phase two? Absolutely, right? But we go back to the original blueprint and say, hey, these are the things that we're considering. And then these are the ways that we need to modify design if needed for future phases. When we move into the build phase, we implement an agile type of methodology. What does that mean, right? What that means is as we build items from our team and have the core project team involved from the client, is show them the prototype, show them the, hey, this is the build component, instead of waiting until a later phase to show the outcome. This helps improve the system use, make sure that both the client and the partner are on the same page. And as we go through these phases, there are always upgrades that happen. There might be a new feature that we need to implement in planning or close that's come out from the software vendor, and we can build that into that agile build process. Another key aspect of program success, can't emphasize it enough, is organizational change management. Larger firms, and maybe even some smaller firms, they have internal organizational change management or OCM consultants within their organization. But we also provide that as a service, and that helps, the alleviating the fear of change, right? I'm doing all of these things in Excel today. Hey, I'm building my account structure today in Excel, using this process. But as we have that OCM piece in place throughout the life cycle of the project, that helps ensure user adoption at the end of the day. Another best practice is training. A lot of times we go through the project proposals and talk about a program with clients, is clients want to take on their own training, which is fine as long as you have the proper skill set to do so. So if the client wants to do their own training, we definitely will offer a train the trainer approach, and mentor those internal champions to be able to deliver it to the end users. Or we could take it on from a consultancy and do all of the end user training. Both of those work. It really comes down to the internal skill set that an organization has, creating the proper training plan, which OCM would be involved with, creating that timeline. Hey, who's going to develop the training? Who's going to deliver it? Do we have the proper modalities in place? Maybe a learning management system, with our, global world now and, quote unquote, post-COVID, we've done a lot of virtual training in the past few years, and, it's how you consume the data. But the training aspect, very key for CPM adoption. Lastly, is how do we know that we got, what we wanted out of the system, either in the phase or the end of the journey? And that's the deployment phase. And part of the deployment phase is making sure user testing is signed off, making sure any changes or modifications that need to be made are addressed not only in the build phase, but also signed off at the end of the project to say, hey, we were considering this for consolidations or close. It works as expected. But in the future, in phase 2, when we do account recs, we want to document that, hey, this is a process or thing that we might need to change to realize the value out of the system. When a project ends and we deploy, the journey doesn't end, right? It keeps going because the platform is modifiable. There's a lot of add-ons you can do. And with that, if you engage with your partner and keep going through hypercare or a managed service offering, you'll have that relationship built when we need to call on Proficient or whoever's implementing to be able to continue that project. So every project should have some type of hypercare phase. And what that means is the hypercare is part of the project. So whatever number of weeks that might be, to have the knowledge base from the consultants that have been on the ground or virtually to help the admin, that's where the hypercare piece comes in. But then going forward, what does that support looks like? And then we can, think about making development changes or adding on based upon new requirements that need to be met by the client. All of these take into account the success of your CPM deployment. So if you can think about all of this, is there are different stages through a CPM program. Again, it starts at the beginning, thinking about the future, not just the current state, and then ending off thinking about what you can get out of the system today. You will be in a better spot from your current state. It's how much of that value you want to realize today and how much you want to think about moving forward. So what you've heard today is basically, hey, these are the challenges. Most organizations are coming from Excel. There's a large percentage of clients who are coming from Excel, but then also thinking about all of the pieces from close, budgeting, forecasting, what a CPM program would look like and what the overall journey would look like. And we can move to any questions that anyone might have for anything that you heard today or anything beyond that. Turn it over to you, Bridget.
All right, thank you, Saju, and thank you, Carlos. It looks like we are ready to open up the call to any questions that have come in via the chat. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and get those questions that you might have in. The questions tab is just going to be to the right of your screen there. I'll go ahead and start us off with the first question that has come in. All right, what have you seen as the biggest challenge converting from Excel to a CPM system?
I can take that one, Bridget. So from going from Excel, especially to a CPM system, end user adoption is going to be key because they're married to their day-to-day process in Excel. And when we think about Excel, it's like a relational view, row column layout. We're looking at different worksheets, different workbooks, maybe 50 to 100 workbooks to get through close or planning process. Biggest challenge I've seen is changing their mindset and changing their viewpoint on how to get to their data. How do we tackle that challenge? That's through understanding dimensionality in any platform, and that takes training and knowledge transfer with the project team, and then eventual end user training and change management. That's the best way to tackle that. End result is they'll get a better view of their data and they'll be better to be able to analyze the data. I used to be a financial analyst back in the day, and when we converted, it was hard for me at the beginning, but once you get used to it, that's they definitely see the results.
All right, thank you. All right, another question we had come in. What is the time commitment of client staff for a typical CPM project?
I can take this one as well, Carlos. From a delivery perspective, especially when we think about commitment from the client team, the heaviest percentage of use from the subject matter experts is typically at the beginning, during the assessment into requirements and design. and then it'll taper off during the build phase. And then as we go through that agile build, either through weekly meetings, that percentage will decrease and then pick up back at toward the user testing and user training timeframes. So I would say if I had to put a percentage to it, like an IT SME, 50% of the time during requirements and design, especially to define the connectors or getting to the source system, defining the queries, those type of things. For FP&A and accounting, especially on the functional side, understanding what the requirements are, I would say be heavier during requirements, maybe 75%. But after those meetings subside, then it would, drop off to 50 and then eventually, 25 and then pick back up at validation and testing. Thank you for the questions. Hopefully that answered them.
Appreciate it. All right, well, thank you so much. It looks like that is the end of all of the questions that have come in. So I will go ahead and close today's event out. Be sure to check us out online at proficient.com, where you can find our blogs, white papers, upcoming events, as well as customer success stories and other great content. So I encourage you to check us out there. As a reminder, there will be an email sent to you with a link to today's event with all of that great content that we just heard. I'd like to thank our speakers and to everyone who was able to join us. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.